afternoon on this slightly wet June evening. It's been thundering and clapping of thunder and bits and pieces for the last couple of hours to try and quench this heat wave we've been having. I want to do a floor test on this replacement ST170 engine I got hold of. As far as I know, it's just I'm straight out of a car. The car was breaking them up for racing bits and pieces. Came with flywheel that I've got to get some new bolts for. I just put the flywheel on temporarily. I've got a spare starter motor that fits my Type 9 gearbox, but doesn't fit the flexi plate very well on here, but it should be enough in a minute to hopefully to sort of bolt all this up when I'm ready. If you hold it in here, just on the flexi plate at the moment, you can see that I've got a bit of an interference issue with the flywheel. It's going to eat away at the casing of the starter motor, so I'll just mark that out. I'm going to get the Dremel out, just grind enough to allow the flywheel to turn. Only one bolt lines up, so I've actually marked through the back of this one here, so in about around there I've got another bolt that will come through here. I'll take the flex plate off and re-drill it all. Got a simple ignition loom that one of the chums Matt has lent me, or the actual box, and we just build out the same box on somebody else's kit car to know what the wires go to. So I'm just going to be running the essentials, so literally just a pair of wires to the crank position sensor where it's hiding down here, just to let the ECU know where the engine is. We won't go into the coil pack when it sits on there. Obviously a starter, won't be using the one that goes to the temperature sensor. I'll just be using the bare bones. That should allow me to get to fire up. Jason has lent me the remains of an exhaust manifold that he got on one of his engines, so that may or may not have a exhaust box just welded onto it, just to try and keep the neighbours a little bit happier. All I want to do is just literally fire it all up, do a bit of a oil test, just a pressure, maybe run a pressure gauge off of it, maybe just a light, and then do a compression test to make sure I've got reasonable pressure in the cylinders, and then I know I've got a good basis to start from. So I'm going to carry on just so I get in the start mode ready. Right, as you would have seen, I've drilled a bolt through here. So I've now got the two fixing bolts, and this one here I'm going to try and put a little bit of clamp on it when we actually do try and start it, just to try and get rid of any more flex that's maybe left in it, because obviously it's only designed, the flex plate as a joint between the two, so there's a little bit of flex still on there. So yeah, I might have to even maybe put a wedge down the back here just to try and keep the starter motor nice and perpendicular to the flywheel. Yes, that's all ready to go. I've now got to just sort out the other bits and pieces before I give it a go and try and start it up. Right, I've been having a bit more of a play, trying to whack up the loom, the temporary loom, to try and get this engine started. So this is Matt's little electronic ignition module, the spare one that he's got. I think it's come out of a Fiesta or Focus or something. Obviously all I need to wire up for it is going to be the crank position sensor, which I've made a plug up for that. Didn't actually have the right plug for the coil pack, so I've obviously terminated that inside. And then we'll eventually have, I think this is going to be the earth wire, and somewhere around here I think the black one's going to be the ignition live. So that's what I'm going to try and use to start the engine when I get around to doing it. Over at the engine, I've wired up, let's go around the other side. The wire that I place the solenoid just onto a piece of wire that I can put onto the battery that I've got hooked up. Set up my cables, obviously one's on the permanent live on the solenoid that would normally go to the battery, and also there's an earth on the other end of these leads, and obviously I'm going to have the earth and positive around the battery. I've also wired up a proper pressure gauge that I've been using to play around with some other engines as well to check the oil pressure. Obviously I've done a bit of playing already, so hopefully it's all going to work when I try it out. There's my earth, and the other end of these very long jump leads come around to my battery off the Robin Hood. Got a few bits of metal and stuff underneath it, so it is reasonably secure. I'll stand next to it just to try and make sure it wasn't going to fall over when it first started kicking. Got all the wires out of the way of the flywheel, likewise around the crankshaft as well. Get the oil pressure gauge back out of the way. I've been playing with that a little bit, so I'll go over here. So that end of the crank's nice and clear. So I've gone through and done some compression testing. I don't know how long the engine's been sat without running. The spark plugs were very tight to get out, so I imagine they were a bit rusty inside there. And I've gone down and tried all the cylinders out, straight out of the box, with the oil not even sort of moving around. Tried cranking the engine over a few times, obviously. Haven't tried to fire it up yet, just really to get things moved around. And I've had to go up bleeding out the gauge at the moment as well. Got some reasonable compression on it dry, ranging from about 75 up to 100. Cranked around a bit more, obviously made sure the oil pressure gauge was reading. Put the VVT valve in out of another engine, because obviously it was leaking a bit of oil out of there, losing a bit of pressure. Cranked around for about a minute, got the pipe work nice and low for the oil pipe, so it didn't have to go too far. Wait to come out the end of the pipe, then obviously nipped up. So now getting some pressure, only about 40 psi on cranking. Yes, so this should allow me to demonstrate how it will turn over. So this is the other end of the solenoid, battery wired up. Hopefully just touching this on here should rotate the engine. So I've got some more pressure. It's about 40 psi on now. That's just really spinning over. Plugs are obviously out at the moment. I went back and redid the compressions once I had a bit more oil up, and got a couple more 85, 70 and 100s. Obviously quite a way out, not out of imbalance, but obviously worth having a go to see if it improved itself once it's been running the car a while. So that's obviously all good. Next stage is going to be wire up the fuel tank, pressure regulator to the bike carbs, fuel pump obviously to the battery, and then part spark plugs back in, and maybe try and get a spark out of it, but that'll probably be tomorrow now. Right, hopefully I'm going to successfully floor start the ST170 engine. That's a replacement for my blue kit car. It's just an engine that I've managed to get hold of, and just basically put things back on it. So I've ended up with putting a dual mass flywheel on it. I've had to change the sensor for one out of my other car, because it didn't seem to be working very well. Just literally got the exhaust bolted on there. Coil patch is sitting on here. Just had to put another set of plugs in. I am getting a bit of a spit back for on the carburetors at the moment, but they're only a set of old bike carbs, so there's probably issues wrong with them anyway. Hopefully I'll get some more pressure up in a minute. Around this side, bike carbs bolted on and just roughly made to fit onto the ST plastic manifold. Just some long hoses, bent at an angle just to make sure I get some fuel in there. I've got the starter motor obviously wired up. The main supply on the starter motor goes around to the positive of the battery, and obviously I've got a wire here to touch onto the positive to start the solenoid in a minute. That'll turn over. I've got a friend's very basic ECU, which I think is off of a Focus or Fiesta, obviously runs the Z-Tech, just temporarily wired up to coil pack, which is a brand new one that's normally a spare. Just got some wires plugged in here. Also you've got the crank position sensor wired up there as well, and just the remaining wires off of here is going to be the positive supply to the battery and negative supply to the battery. So I'm going to fire up the fuel pump, which is wired up, get myself some pressure up on the fuel gauge, and then hopefully, whilst trying to steady the engine, put the solenoid wire on there. Hopefully you'll hear it running, and my able assistant will hopefully try and get it running before it falls on my leg. Right, that's the for the fuel pump, and also the ignition. This should hopefully turn it over.